The moonlight painted silver streaks across her sleeping face, and Ethan Sawyer had never seen anything quite so dangerously beautiful. As this woman curled beneath the endless Texas sky with nothing but a worn blanket and a loaded derringer clutched in her dirt-stained hand. He had been riding back to his ranch outside Johnson City after a week of herding cattle north when he spotted her, and his first thought was that she was dead until he saw the gentle rise and fall of her chest. His second thought was that a woman alone out here might as well be, given the bandits and drifters who roamed these parts in the spring of 1878. Ethan dismounted quietly, his boots making soft sounds against the dry grass, and he knelt a respectful distance away, clearing his throat so as not to startle her too badly. Her eyes flew open, and that derringer came up faster than lightning, aimed straight at his chest with a steadiness that told him she knew how to use it. "Easy now," Ethan said, raising both hands slowly. "I am not here to hurt you, miss. Just saw you sleeping out here alone and figured you might want something safer than open ground with coyotes and worse prowling about." She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes the color of whiskey in lamplight, assessing him with the kind of wariness that spoke of hard experience. Her dark hair had come loose from its braid, framing a face smudged with trail dust and exhaustion. She looked to be in her early 20s, maybe a year or two younger than his own 26 years. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice hoarse from sleep or thirst or both. "Ethan Sawyer. I have got a ranch about 5 miles east of here. Was heading home when I spotted you." He gestured toward the darkness around them. "This is not safe country for anyone alone, especially not a woman." "I can handle myself," she said, but the words lacked conviction, and he noticed the way her hand trembled slightly even as she kept the gun trained on him. "I am sure you can," Ethan said gently. "But there is handling yourself, and there is having a roof over your head and a locked door between you and whatever might come prowling. Sleep under my roof, under my protection. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, she is there, so you would not be alone with just me, proper and respectable." She lowered the derringer slightly, and he saw the exhaustion in every line of her body. "Why would you help me?" "Because out here we help each other or we do not survive," Ethan said simply. "And because my mama raised me to know better than to leave a woman alone in the dark when I have got the means to offer shelter." The woman studied him for another long moment, then slowly lowered the gun completely. "My name is Lily Anderson. And I suppose I am too tired to argue about pride right now." Ethan felt something shift in his chest at the sound of her name, though he could not have explained what or why. He stood slowly and offered her his hand. "Let me help you up, Miss Anderson. We will get you back to the ranch, get some food in you, and you can rest properly." She hesitated, then placed her hand in his, and the touch sent an unexpected jolt through him. Her hand was calloused and strong, the hand of someone who worked hard, and when he pulled her to her feet, she swayed slightly. He steadied her with a hand at her elbow. "When did you last eat?" he asked. "Yesterday morning, I think, maybe the day before." She gathered her blanket and a small canvas bag that seemed to hold everything she owned. "My horse threw a shoe 2 days back. I had to let her go to a farmer who promised to care for her. I have been walking since." Ethan felt a surge of anger at whatever circumstances had brought her to this state, but he kept his voice level. "Well, you will not be walking anymore tonight. Can you ride? You can take my horse and I will walk alongside." "I can ride," she said, and there was a fierce independence in her tone that made him want to smile despite the situation. He helped her mount his gelding, a steady bay named Copper, and then took the reins to lead them home. The walk gave him time to think, to wonder what had brought Lily Anderson to sleeping alone under the stars in central Texas with nothing but a blanket and a derringer. He glanced up at her occasionally and saw her fighting to stay awake, swaying slightly in the saddle. "Tell me about your ranch," she said after a while, clearly trying to keep herself alert. "It is called the Double S," Ethan said. "About 800 acres, mostly cattle, some horses. I have been building it up for the past 4 years since my father passed and left it to me. It is not fancy, but it is honest work and good land. Just you running it. I've got 3 ranch hands who work the property, and Mrs. Chen who keeps the house. She came here from San Francisco 5 years back when her husband died, needed work, and my father hired her. She is a fine cook and keeps everything running smooth." He paused. "What brought you out here, if you do not mind my asking?" He felt rather than saw her tense in the saddle. "Running from something or running toward something?" "Mostly from," she admitted quietly. "My parents died of fever last winter in Arkansas. The bank took the farm. I had an aunt in San Antonio who wrote that I could come stay with her, help with her boarding house. I was on my way there when my money ran out in Johnson City. I took work at the saloon, just serving drinks, but the owner decided he wanted more than that from me." Her voice went hard. "I told him what he could do with his expectations, and he told me I could find myself another job and another place to stay. That was 3 days ago." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. He knew the saloon she meant, knew the owner, a man named Garrett who had a reputation for exactly the kind of behavior she described. He had no right to throw you out like that. "Right does not seem to matter much when you have got no money and no one to stand with you," Lily said tiredly. "I have been trying to figure out how to earn enough for a stagecoach ticket south, but nobody in town seems to be hiring, at least not for respectable work." "Well, you have got a place to stay now, at least until you figure out what comes next," Ethan said firmly. "And if you are looking for work, I could use an extra hand. Mrs. Chen has been saying she could use help with the kitchen garden and the chickens, and there is always mending and other work around a ranch." "I do not want charity," Lily said quietly. "It is not charity if you are working for it," Ethan countered. "Room and board plus wages. Fair trade." She was quiet for a long moment. "Why are you being so kind to me? You do not know me." Ethan considered the question, considered the real answer, which was that from the moment he had seen her sleeping beneath the stars, something in him had shifted, had recognized something essential in her that called to something in him. But that would sound like madness, so instead he said, "Because kindness should not need a reason, and because something tells me you have had precious little of it lately." The ranch house came into view as they crested a low rise, lamplight glowing warm in the windows. It was a solid 2-story structure built from local limestone, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Ethan had helped his father build it when he was 16, and he had spent the years since maintaining and improving it. Outbuildings dotted the property. A barn, a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, a smokehouse, a chicken coop, and various sheds. Mrs. Chen must have heard them approaching because she appeared on the porch, a small, sturdy woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that managed to be both welcoming and no-nonsense. "Ethan Sawyer, you are 3 hours later than you said you would be, and I was starting to worry," she called out, then stopped when she saw Lily. "And who is this?" "This is Miss Lily Anderson," Ethan said, helping Lily down from the horse. She was steadier on her feet now, though still clearly exhausted. "I found her camping alone out past the creek. She needs a place to stay, and I told her we could offer her room and board in exchange for helping around the ranch." Mrs. Chen's sharp eyes took in Lily's condition in an instant, and her expression softened. "Well, come inside then, child. You look half dead on your feet. I have got stew keeping warm, and there is a guest room upstairs with clean sheets." She turned to Ethan. "You stable copper and then come get your own supper, and wash up properly, you smell like cattle." Ethan grinned. Mrs. Chen had been bossing him around since he was 22, and he would not have it any other way. "Yes, madam." He watched as Mrs. Chen ushered Lily into the house, already chattering about food and baths and rest, and felt that strange tightness in his chest again. Something about this woman had gotten under his skin in the space of less than an hour, and he had a feeling his life had just gotten a lot more complicated. After he had tended to copper and washed up at the pump, Ethan entered the kitchen to find Lily seated at the big wooden table, a bowl of beef stew in front of her and a cup of coffee at her elbow. She was eating slowly, carefully, like someone who had learned not to bolt food even when starving. Mrs. Chen was bustling around, cutting bread and filling another bowl for Ethan. "Sit," she ordered, and he obeyed, taking his place across from Lily. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that came from exhaustion and relief rather than awkwardness. Ethan found himself watching Lily, noting the way some color had come back into her cheeks, the way her shoulders had lost some of their rigid tension. "This is wonderful," Lily said finally, looking at Mrs. Chen. "Thank you. Eating is not something you should have to thank people for, Mrs. Chen said briskly, but she looked pleased. "You finish up, and I will show you to your room. There is water for washing, and I will find you something clean to sleep in." "I do not want to be any trouble," Lily started, but Mrs. Chen waved her off. "Trouble is what I call it when the ranch hands track mud through my clean kitchen. A guest who needs help is not trouble, it is human decency. Now finish your stew." Lily met Ethan's eyes across the table, and he saw gratitude there, mixed with lingering wariness and something else he could not quite name. He offered her a small smile. "Welcome to the Double S, Miss Anderson." The next morning dawned bright and hot, the sun climbing into a cloudless sky that promised scorching temperatures by midday. Ethan was up before dawn, as always, and by the time he returned from checking on the cattle with his foreman, Manuel Rodriguez, it was nearing 8 o'clock, and his stomach was reminding him that he had worked through breakfast. He found Lily in the kitchen garden with Mrs. Chen, both women wearing sunbonnets and working gloves, pulling weeds from between rows of vegetables. Lily had changed into a simple work dress that Mrs. Chen must have provided, and she moved with the easy competence of someone who knew her way around a garden. "Morning," Ethan called, and Lily looked up, shading her eyes against the sun. She looked better after a night of proper rest, the exhaustion less evident in her face, though there were still shadows under her eyes. "Good morning," she replied. "Mrs. Chen has been showing me around. You have got a good setup here." "My father believed in being as self-sufficient as possible," Ethan said, walking over to lean against the garden fence. "We grow most of our own vegetables, raise our own chickens and pigs, makes it so we are not dependent on supply runs to town except for staples." "Smart," Lily said, and he noticed she had dirt under her fingernails and a smudge on her cheek. Somehow it made her look even more appealing, and he had to remind himself that she was his guest and under his protection, not someone he should be entertaining such thoughts about. Mrs. Chen straightened up, pressing a hand to her back. "Ethan, if you are looking for breakfast, there are biscuits and gravy keeping warm on the stove. Take some to the boys in the bunkhouse too. And tell Manuel I need to talk to him about fixing that broken slat in the chicken coop before a fox gets in." "Yes, madam," Ethan said, tipping his hat. He started to turn away, then paused. "Miss Anderson, when you are done here, I thought I might show you the rest of the property if you are interested. Help you get your bearings." Lily glanced at Mrs. Chen, who nodded. "Go on. We are about done here anyway, and it is going to get too hot for garden work soon." "Just wear your bonnet, child. That sun will burn you something fierce." An hour later, Ethan and Lily were riding out across the ranch, Lily mounted on a gentle mare named Daisy while Ethan rode Copper. He showed her the boundaries of the property, the creek that provided water for the cattle, the stands of live oak that offered shade. He introduced her to the ranch hands. Manuel, who had worked for Ethan's father and was now in his 40s with a wife and 3 children living in a small house on the property. And 2 younger men, James and Tom, who bunked in the bunkhouse and worked hard for their wages. All 3 men were polite to Lily, tipping their hats and welcoming her, though Ethan noticed the curiosity in their eyes. It was not common for a single woman to show up at her ranch alone, and he knew there would be questions. He would answer them honestly when asked, but for now, he was content to let Lily have some privacy while she settled in. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the creak of leather, the rhythm of hoofbeats, and the occasional call of a bird. Ethan found himself hyper-aware of Lily's presence, the way she sat her horse with natural grace, the way the sunlight caught the dark strands of her hair that had escaped her bonnet. "It is beautiful out here," Lily said finally, and there was something wistful in her voice. "So much space. So much sky. You did not have this in Arkansas. We had land, but it was different. More trees, more green. This is so open, so big. It makes me feel small, but in a good way. Like my problems are not as insurmountable as they seemed when I was sleeping under the stars wondering where my next meal would come from." Ethan felt that tightness in his chest again. "You are safe here, Lily. I want you to know that. For as long as you need to stay, you have got a place here." She looked at him, really looked at him, and he saw something shift in her expression. "Why did you really offer to help me, Ethan? And please do not say it is just because it is the right thing to do. Plenty of people have passed me by without a second glance since I left Arkansas." He considered lying, considered giving her an easy answer, but something about the direct way she asked the question demanded honesty. "I do not fully know," he admitted. "When I saw you sleeping out there, something in me just knew I could not leave you. Knew that if I rode away, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Maybe that does not make sense, but it is the truth." Lily was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. "That is either the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me or the strangest," she said finally, but there was a hint of a smile playing at her lips. "Can it be both?" Ethan asked and was rewarded with a genuine laugh, bright and unexpected. "I suppose it can," she said. They returned to the ranch house as the sun was climbing toward noon, the heat becoming oppressive. Mrs. Chen had cold lemonade waiting and shooed them both out of her kitchen while she prepared the midday meal. Ethan showed Lily the small library his father had maintained, a collection of books that ranged from practical manuals on ranching to novels and poetry. "You are welcome to any of these," he said, watching as Lily ran her fingers along the spines with obvious longing. "My father believed in education, said a man who could not read was a man who could not grow." "My mother felt the same way," Lily said softly. "She taught me my letters as soon as I was old enough to hold a pencil. We did not have many books, but the ones we had, I read until the pages fell apart." She pulled out a volume of Tennyson and opened it carefully. "I have not read anything in months. I had to sell most of what I owned to buy supplies for the trip to San Antonio." "Then consider this your library too for as long as you are here," Ethan said. Over the following days, a routine began to establish itself. Lily proved to be as capable as she was willing, throwing herself into work around the ranch with a determination that earned Mrs. Chen's approval and Ethan's admiration. She helped in the garden, tended the chickens, learned to milk the cow, and took over the mending that had been piling up. In the evenings, after supper, She would often sit on the porch with a book while Ethan worked on tack or paperwork nearby. They talked, slowly at first, then with increasing ease. She told him about growing up in Arkansas, about parents who had loved each other deeply and worked hard to build a life. About the fever that had taken them within days of each other, leaving her alone at 23 with debts she could not pay, and a farm the bank was eager to claim. About the aunt in San Antonio she had never met, but who had written kind letters after hearing of her parents' deaths. He told her about growing up on the ranch, about a father who had been stern but fair, and a mother who had died giving birth to a stillborn daughter when Ethan was 10. About learning to run a ranch through hard work and harder lessons. About his dreams of building the Double S into something that would last, something that could support not just him but families, a community. "You are building more than a ranch," Lily observed one evening about a week after her arrival. They were sitting on the porch in the relative cool of twilight, watching the stars begin to emerge. "You are building a legacy." "That is the idea," Ethan said. "Out here, you either build something that lasts or you get swallowed up by the land. I choose to build." "It must be lonely sometimes, though," Lily said quietly. "All this space, all this responsibility, and just you carrying it." Ethan looked at her, at the way the lamplight from the window caught her profile, and felt his heart kick against his ribs. "It has been," he admitted. "But lately, it has felt less so." She turned to meet his eyes, and the air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken things. For a moment, Ethan thought about closing the distance between them, about taking her hand or brushing that strand of hair away from her face. But he held back, aware that she was under his roof, under his protection, and that anything between them had to be her choice, made freely and without the weight of obligation. As if sensing his thoughts, Lily looked away, but not before he saw the hint of color in her cheeks. "I should probably turn in," she said, standing. "Mrs. Chen wants to show me how to make preserves tomorrow, and she starts early." "Sleep well, Lily," Ethan said, and watched her disappear into the house, feeling the loss of her presence like a physical thing. The second week brought changes that Ethan had not anticipated. Word had gotten around Johnson City that he had taken in a woman, and while most folks were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, there were those who were not so kind. He first heard about it when he went into town for supplies, stopping at the general store to pick up flour and sugar and other staples that Mrs. Chen had requested. The store owner, a man named Porter who had known Ethan's father, gave him a careful look as he tallied up the purchases. "Heard you have got a new addition to your household. Mrs. Chen could use the help," Ethan said neutrally. "Miss Anderson is a hard worker." "I am sure she is," Porter said, but there was a note in his voice that Ethan did not like. "Just be careful, son. People talk, and not always kindly. A single woman living under your roof, even with Mrs. Chen there as chaperone, well, there are those who will make assumptions." "Then those people can mind their own business," Ethan said flatly, his jaw tightening. "Miss Anderson is under my protection, and anyone who wants to cast stones at her character will have to answer to me." Porter raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I am not one of them, Ethan. Just warning you so you know what you are up against." Garrett has been running his mouth at the saloon, saying things about Miss Anderson that are not fit for polite company. Ethan felt anger surge hot and immediate. "What kind of things?" "The kind that suggest she was willing to do more than serve drinks but wanted more money than he was offering," Porter said grimly. "I do not believe it, and most decent folks do not either, but it is out there." Ethan paid for his supplies with barely controlled fury and loaded them into the wagon with sharp, precise movements. He was climbing into the driver's seat when a voice called out behind him, "Sawyer, hold up." He turned to find Sheriff Coleman walking toward him, a lean man in his 50s with graying hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. Ethan respected Coleman, who was honest in a country where too many lawmen were not. "Sheriff," Ethan said, nodding. "Heard you are having some trouble with Garrett spreading talk," Coleman said without preamble. "Wanted you to know I had a word with him. Told him if I hear he is slandering Miss Anderson again, I will throw him in a cell for disturbing the peace and let him cool off for a few days." "I appreciate that, Sheriff," Ethan said, some of his anger easing. "Miss Anderson came to me when she first got to town, looking for legitimate work," Coleman continued. "She was polite and honest, and I sent her to Garrett thinking he might need a server at the saloon. When I heard what happened, I felt responsible. I should have known better than to trust that man to behave decently." He paused. "She all right out at your place. She is safe and working hard," Ethan confirmed. "Mrs. Chen has taken her under her wing. Good, that is good." Coleman tipped his hat. "You are doing a decent thing, Sawyer. Do not let the gossips make you doubt that." But the encounter left Ethan unsettled, and when he returned to the ranch, he found himself seeking out Lily. She was in the barn, gathering eggs from the nesting boxes, and she looked up with a smile when he entered. "How was town?" she asked, then her smile faded when she saw his expression. "What happened?" he told her, watching her face close off as he relayed what Porter and Sheriff Coleman had said. When he finished, she was gripping the egg basket so tightly her knuckles were white. "I should leave," she said quietly. "I am causing you trouble making people talk. That is not fair to you when you have been nothing but kind." "No," Ethan said firmly, stepping closer. "You are not leaving because some people have nothing better to do than spread lies. You have a place here, Lily, and I will not let gossip drive you away." "But your reputation," she protested. "My reputation can weather some talk," he said. "What matters is that you are safe and have a roof over your head. What matters is that you are here." She looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Why do you care so much? I am nobody, Ethan, just a woman who ran out of options and luck." He took the basket from her hands and set it aside, then took both of her hands in his, feeling the roughness of work calluses against his own. "You are not nobody," he said intently. "You are brave and strong and determined, and you have been dealt a hard hand, but you keep fighting anyway. And you are here, on my ranch, under my roof, and that means something to me. You mean something to me." The admission hung in the air between them, raw and honest, and Ethan saw the exact moment when understanding dawned in Lily's eyes. She did not pull away, but she did not move closer either, just stood there with her hands in his, searching his face. "Ethan," she whispered, and there was so much in the way she said his name, wonder and fear and something that might have been hope. "You do not have to say anything," he said quickly. "I am not asking for anything from you, Lily. I just needed you to know that you matter. That whatever people in town want to say, it does not change the fact that I am glad you are here." She squeezed his hands gently, then released them, stepping back. "I need time," she said softly, "to think, to understand what I am feeling. Everything has happened so fast, and I do not want to make decisions based on gratitude or fear or anything other than what is real." "Take all the time you need," Ethan said, meaning it. "I am not going anywhere, and neither are you unless you choose to." But over the following days, Ethan found himself watching Lily with new awareness, noticing things he had tried not to notice before. The way she laughed at Mrs. Chen's dry observations. The way she sang softly to herself while working in the garden. The way she looked at him sometimes when she thought he was not paying attention, her expression thoughtful and searching. And he noticed the way she seemed to be settling in, not just to the work but to the ranch itself. She learned the names of all the cattle, started suggesting improvements to the chicken coop that Manuel implemented with approval. She spent hours in the library, devouring books with the hunger of someone who had been denied them too long. She baked bread with Mrs. Chen and learned to make the housekeeper's special dumplings, filling the house with warm, yeasty smells that made it feel even more like a home. 3 weeks after Lily's arrival, Ethan received a letter from a cattle buyer in Fort Worth expressing interest in purchasing part of his herd. It would require a trip north, at least 4 days there and back, and he was reluctant to leave. But the offer was too good to pass up, and Manuel assured him that he could handle the ranch in Ethan's absence. The night before he was due to leave, Ethan found Lily on the porch again, this time with her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, staring out at the darkness. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, and she shook her head, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. They sat in silence for a while, the comfortable kind that had become familiar between them. Finally, Lily spoke. "I have been thinking about what you said, about me mattering to you." Ethan felt his heart rate pick up but kept his voice steady. And I think you matter to me too," she said quietly. "More than I expected, more than I was ready for. When I thought about you leaving tomorrow, even just for a few days, I felt this tightness in my chest, this fear that something might happen and you might not come back. That is not just gratitude, Ethan. That is something more." He turned to look at her and found her watching him with open, honest eyes. "What are you saying, Lily?" "I am saying that I want to be here. Not because I have nowhere else to go, not because you saved me, but because when I think about my future, I want it to include this ranch and Mrs. Chen and those stubborn chickens and you." She paused, then added softly, "Especially you." Ethan felt something in him unlock, something he had not realized he had been holding tight and guarded. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his hand. Her skin was soft and warm, and when she leaned into his touch, he felt his breath catch. "I have been falling for you since I saw you sleeping under the stars," he admitted. "Every day since has just made it more clear that I do not want to imagine my life without you in it." "Then do not imagine it," Lily whispered, and closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. But then Lily's hand came up to rest against his chest, and Ethan deepened the kiss, pouring into it all the feelings he had been holding back for weeks. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Lily was smiling. "That was worth waiting for," she said, and Ethan laughed, feeling lighter than he had in years. "I will be back in 4 days," he promised. "And when I get back, we will figure out what comes next, together." "Together," Lily agreed and kissed him again. The trip to Fort Worth was successful, the cattle buyer offering a fair price that would give the Double S a financial cushion for the coming year. But Ethan barely paid attention to the negotiations, his mind constantly drifting back to Lily and the way she had felt in his arms, the taste of her kiss, the promise in her words. He made the return journey in record time, pushing hard but not recklessly, and arrived back at the ranch on a hot afternoon to find chaos waiting for him. Manuel met him in the yard, his face grim. "We have got trouble, Ethan. Garrett showed up here 2 days ago with some men demanding to see Miss Anderson. Said she owed him money for room and board from when she worked at the saloon, and he was here to collect." Ethan felt cold fury wash over him. "Where is Lily? Is she all right?" "She is fine. Mrs. Chen stood on the porch with the shotgun and told them they had best get off our property before she started shooting. I backed her up with the rifle, and James and Tom got between them and the house. They left, but Garrett was spitting mad, said he would be back with the law." "He does not have the law on his side," Ethan said flatly. "Lily does not owe him a damned thing, and Sheriff Coleman knows it. Where is she now? In the house, helping Mrs. Chen with supper. She has been shaken up, Ethan, trying not to show it, but I can tell. Ethan dismounted and headed for the house, his strides long and purposeful. He found Lily in the kitchen, peeling potatoes with hands that trembled slightly. When she saw him, relief flooded her face, and she dropped the knife, crossing the room in 3 quick steps to throw herself into his arms. "You are back," she said against his chest, and he could hear the tears in her voice. "I was so worried. I thought maybe Garrett would go after you on the road, or that something would happen and you would not know to be careful." "I am fine," Ethan said, holding her tightly. "And you are safe." "I will not let him hurt you, Lily. I will not let anyone hurt you." Mrs. Chen cleared her throat pointedly from the stove. "Ethan Sawyer, you let that girl breathe. She has had a trying few days and does not need you squeezing the life out of her, no matter how well-intentioned." Ethan loosened his grip but did not let go entirely, and Lily seemed content to stay in the circle of his arms. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. Between Lily and Mrs. Chen, he got the full story. Garrett had shown up with 3 men, all of them rough types who worked as enforcers for the saloon owner. He had claimed that Lily owed him 2 weeks' rent plus money for food, a total of $40, which was an outrageous sum and a complete fabrication. "He said if I did not pay, he would take it out in other ways," Lily said, her voice small but steady. "That is when Mrs. Chen came out with the shotgun. I told him I would blow holes in him big enough to drive a wagon through if he did not get off our property," Mrs. Chen said with satisfaction. "Manuel and the boys backed me up and those cowards turned tail and ran. But he said he would be back," Lily added. "Said he would bring the sheriff and have me arrested for theft if I did not pay what I owed." "He is bluffing," Ethan said firmly. "Sheriff Coleman knows what kind of man Garrett is, and he will not help him try to extort money from you. But I am going to make sure this is settled once and for all. Tomorrow, I am riding into town with you, and we are going to file a formal complaint with the sheriff about Garrett's harassment. And I am going to make it very clear to Garrett that if he comes near you again, he will answer to me." "I do not want you getting hurt because of me," Lily protested, pulling back to look up at him. "Then it is a good thing I am a fair hand in a fight," Ethan said with a confidence he did not entirely feel. He was not a violent man by nature, but he would protect what was his, and Lily was his to protect whether or not she wore his ring yet. That thought pulled him up short. His ring. Marriage. Was he really thinking about that after less than a month? But even as the question formed, he knew the answer. Yes. He wanted Lily to be his wife, wanted to make their connection permanent and unassailable. But now was not the time, not with this threat hanging over them. The next morning, Ethan and Lily rode into Johnson City together, both dressed in their Sunday best to present a respectable front. They went straight to the sheriff's office, where Coleman listened to their story with a deepening frown. "Garrett is getting bolder," the sheriff said when they finished, "and stupider. He has no legal claim on Miss Anderson, and showing up at your ranch making threats is the kind of thing that can get him in serious trouble." He looked at Lily kindly. "Did you sign any kind of contract with him when you took the job at the saloon?" "No, sir," Lily said. "He just told me I could sleep in the back room and eat kitchen scraps in exchange for serving drinks. There was never any talk of rent or payment." "Then he has no case," Coleman said firmly. "I will go have another conversation with him, and this time I will make it very clear that if he continues this harassment, I will arrest him. You have my word on that, Miss Anderson." "Thank you, Sheriff," Lily said, her relief evident. They left the sheriff's office and were walking toward the general store when a voice called out behind them. "Well, if it is not the lady thief and her protector." Ethan turned to find Garrett standing in the mouth of an alley, flanked by 2 of the men who had accompanied him to the ranch. Garrett was a big man, running to fat but still strong, with mean eyes and a smile that never reached them. "You have got no business with us, Garrett," Ethan said evenly, moving slightly in front of Lily. "The sheriff just told us he will be paying you a visit, so I suggest you go back to your saloon and wait for him there." "The sheriff can say what he wants," Garrett sneered. "That girl owes me money, and I will have it one way or another." "I do not owe you anything," Lily said, her voice stronger than Ethan expected. "You propositioned me, I refused, and you threw me out. That does not create a debt. You calling me a liar?" Garrett took a step forward, and his men moved with him. Ethan's hand went to the Colt at his hip, not drawing but making his intention clear. "I am calling you a liar and worse. Now back off before this gets ugly." For a tense moment, the street seemed to hold its breath. Then Sheriff Coleman's voice rang out from behind them. "Garrett, I was just coming to see you. Seems like you saved me the walk." Garrett's expression went sour, but he stepped back. "Just having a conversation, Sheriff." "Looked more like harassment to me," Coleman said, moving to stand beside Ethan and Lily. "Now, I am going to say this one more time, and if you make me repeat myself, you are going to be bunking in my jail tonight. Miss Anderson does not owe you a cent. You will stop spreading lies about her, and you will stay away from the Double S Ranch. If I hear you have been within a mile of that property, I will arrest you for trespassing and threatening behavior. Do I make myself clear?" Garrett's face was red with anger, but he nodded curtly. "Clear, Sheriff. Good. Now get out of my sight before I change my mind about arresting you right now." Garrett and his men slunk away, and Coleman turned to Ethan and Lily. "I am sorry about that. Man is a cancer on this town, but until he breaks the law in a way I can prove, my hands are tied. You two watch yourselves, especially you, Miss Anderson. Men like Garrett do not take humiliation well." They finished their business in town and rode back to the ranch in thoughtful silence. Ethan could feel the tension radiating off Lily, and when they were far enough from town to have privacy, he reined in Copper and gestured for her to stop as well. "Talk to me," he said gently. "What are you thinking?" Lily dismounted and walked a few paces away, her arms wrapped around herself despite the heat. Ethan followed, giving her space but staying close. "I am thinking that I am trouble," she said finally. "That Garrett is going to keep making problems, and sooner or later someone is going to get hurt because of me. Maybe I should just leave, go to San Antonio like I originally planned, get out of your life before I ruin it." "No," Ethan said flatly. "You are not running, and you are not ruining anything. Garrett is a bully who preys on people he thinks are weak and alone. But you are not alone anymore, Lily. You have me. You have Mrs. Chen. You have Manuel and the boys. You have people who will stand with you, and that makes all the difference." "But what if he hurts you?" Lily turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "What if something happens to you because you are protecting me? I could not live with that, Ethan." He closed the distance between them and took her by the shoulders, gentle but firm. "Listen to me. Nothing is going to happen to me, and even if there was a risk, I would take it gladly because you are worth it. Do you understand? You are worth fighting for, worth standing up for, worth everything." A tear spilled over and tracked down her cheek, and he wiped it away with his thumb. "I am not leaving you, Lily. Not now, not ever, not unless you tell me to go, and even then I would probably argue with you about it." That surprised a watery laugh out of her. "You are stubborn." "I prefer determined," Ethan said with a small smile. "Now, can we please go home, Mrs. Chen is making chicken and dumplings for supper, and I have been dreaming about them for 4 days." "Home," Lily repeated softly, and something in her expression softened. "Yes, let's go home." The weeks that followed were tense but peaceful. Garrett stayed away from the ranch, though Ethan heard through town sources that he was still running his mouth at the saloon. But with Sheriff Coleman keeping an eye on him and the good people of Johnson City starting to push back against his lies, the damage was contained. At the ranch, life settled into a new normal. Ethan found excuses to be near Lily, to work alongside her in the garden or walk with her in the evenings when the heat broke. They stole kisses when Mrs. Chen was not watching, though the housekeeper's knowing look suggested she saw more than they thought. They talked for hours, sharing dreams and fears and the thousand small details that make up a life. Ethan learned that Lily loved thunderstorms and hated snakes, that she could recite poetry from memory and had a beautiful singing voice she was shy about sharing, that she wanted children someday, a whole house full of them, and a garden big enough to get lost in. Lily learned that Ethan had wanted to be a teacher before his father died, and he had to take over the ranch, that he played the harmonica tolerably well and could fix almost anything if given enough time and tools, that he wanted to build not just a ranch but a community, a place where people could put down roots and build lives. "We want the same things," Lily said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "A home, a family, something lasting." "Yes," Ethan agreed, then took a breath and decided to take the leap. "Lily, I know it has only been a few weeks, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you. I want to marry you, want to build that life we are both dreaming about together. I know it is fast, and I know you might need more time, but I had to tell you." Lily turned to look at him, her eyes wide and shining. "Ethan Sawyer, are you proposing to me?" "I am," he said, his heart pounding. "I do not have a ring yet, but I will get one. And I will do this properly, on one knee with flowers if you want. But I needed you to know how I feel, what I want." She was quiet for a long moment, and Ethan felt panic start to rise. Had he pushed too hard, too fast? But then a smile broke across her face, bright and joyous. "I do not need flowers or a ring right now," she said. "What I need is for you to kiss me and tell me again that you love me, because I love you too, Ethan. I have been falling for you since you found me sleeping under the stars, and I do not want to fall alone anymore." Ethan did not need to be told twice. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the love and promise he felt, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "So is that a yes to marrying me?" he asked, wanting to be clear. "That is a yes to marrying you," Lily confirmed, laughing, "and to building a life together, and to everything that comes with it." They told Mrs. Chen that evening, and the housekeeper's response was to hug them both fiercely and declare that she had known it from the first night when she saw how Ethan looked at Lily. "About time you two figured it out," she said, wiping at her eyes. "Now, when is the wedding? And please say soon, because I am not getting any younger, and I want to see you two properly married before I am too old to dance at the reception." They decided on a month. Enough time to arrange things properly, but not so long that they had to wait unnecessarily. Ethan rode into town the next day and bought a gold band with a small diamond, simple and beautiful. And when he slipped it onto Lily's finger that evening, she cried happy tears and kissed him until they were both dizzy. The news spread through Johnson City quickly, and to Ethan's relief, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People who had been uncertain about Lily's presence at the ranch seemed to accept the engagement as proof of respectability. Women from the surrounding ranches began to visit, bringing small gifts and welcoming Lily into their community. Even the pastor at the church, an elderly man named Reverend Mitchell, gave them his blessing and agreed to perform the ceremony. But not everyone was happy. 3 weeks before the wedding, Manuel came to find Ethan in the barn, his expression troubled. "We have got a problem," he said without preamble. I was in town getting supplies and I heard Garrett talking. He is planning something, Ethan. I do not know what, but he was saying things about how Miss Lily would regret choosing you over his generosity. Ethan felt cold settle in his stomach. Did he say anything specific? No, but the men he was talking to, they are not the type you want sniffing around your property. Drifters and troublemakers. I am worried he is planning to cause trouble at the wedding or maybe before. Ethan thought quickly. Double the watch on the property. I want at least 2 people on guard at all times, especially at night. And I am going to have another conversation with Sheriff Coleman. But before he could ride into town, Garrett made his move. It happened on a Tuesday morning, 5 days before the wedding was scheduled. Ethan was out checking fence lines in the north pasture when he heard the gunshot, distant but unmistakable. His blood turned to ice, and he spurred Copper into a gallop, racing back toward the ranch house. He arrived to find chaos. Smoke was pouring from the chicken coop, flames visible through the gaps in the wood. Manuel and James were fighting the fire with buckets of water while Tom stood guard with a rifle. Mrs. Chen was on the porch with the shotgun, and Lily was beside her, pale but steady, a revolver in her hand. Ethan dismounted at a run. "Is everyone all right?" "We are fine," Mrs. Chen said grimly. "But the chicken coop is not. And before you ask, yes, it was Garrett. I saw him and 2 of his men. They threw burning rags into the coop and took off when Tom fired a warning shot." Ethan felt rage, cold and focused, settle over him. "Tom, can you handle things here?" "Yes, sir. The fire is almost out and most of the chickens scattered before it got bad. We will round them up." Ethan turned to Lily, who had come down from the porch to stand beside him. "Are you sure you are all right?" "I am fine," she said, though her voice shook slightly. "Angry but fine. This has to stop, Ethan. He has to be stopped." "He will be," Ethan promised. "Manuel, you are with me. Tom, stay here and keep everyone safe. Mrs. Chen, if anyone tries to come onto this property, you shoot first and ask questions later." "With pleasure," Mrs. Chen said darkly. Ethan and Manuel rode hard for Johnson City, arriving at the sheriff's office to find Coleman already there, looking troubled. "I heard," the sheriff said as soon as they walked in. "Mrs. Harper from the ranch next to yours sent her son to tell me there was smoke. I was just about to head out." "It was Garrett," Ethan said flatly. "Mrs. Chen saw him. He set fire to our chicken coop, and only luck kept it from spreading to the barn or the house." Coleman's expression went hard. "That is arson, which is a hanging offense. Where is Garrett now?" "I was hoping you could tell me," Ethan said. They found Garrett at the saloon, drinking whiskey and laughing with his men. He looked up when Coleman walked in, flanked by Ethan and Manuel, and his smile faded. "Sheriff," he said warily, "something I can do for you." "You can put your hands behind your back so I can arrest you for arson," Coleman said flatly. "Ethan's ranch was attacked this morning and you were seen at the scene." Garrett stood slowly, his hand moving toward the gun at his hip. "That is a lie. I have been here all morning. Ask anyone." "I will ask them, but witnesses say otherwise, and I tend to believe a respectable rancher and his housekeeper over a saloon owner with a grudge." Coleman's hand rested on his own gun. "Now, are you going to come quietly, or do we have to do this the hard way?" For a tense moment, it could have gone either way. Then one of Garrett's men made the mistake of reaching for his gun, and everything exploded into motion. Ethan dove to the side as gunfire erupted. He drew his Colt and fired, not to kill but to disarm, and had the satisfaction of seeing the weapon fly from the man's hand. Manuel tackled another of Garrett's supporters, and Coleman had his gun trained on Garrett himself. "Do not even think about it," the sheriff warned, and Garrett slowly raised his hands. The whole thing was over in less than a minute, but it felt like an eternity. When the smoke cleared, two of Garrett's men were disarmed and on the floor. Garrett was in handcuffs, and Ethan was checking himself for injuries and finding only a graze on his arm where a bullet had come too close. "You all right?" Coleman asked, and Ethan nodded. "Better than them," he said, looking at Garrett with cold satisfaction. "What happens now?" "Now I lock him up and send for a judge," Coleman said. "With multiple witnesses to the arson and his men drawing on a lawman, Garrett is looking at serious time behind bars. He will not be troubling you or Miss Anderson again." True to his word, Coleman arrested Garrett and his associates, and word came within the week that a circuit judge would be in Johnson City within the month to hear the case. In the meantime, Garrett sat in jail, and the town seemed to breathe easier without his malignant presence. The wedding took place as planned, on a bright Saturday morning in early October when the worst of the summer heat had broken. Lily wore a dress that Mrs. Chen and the women from the neighboring ranches had helped her make, simple but beautiful in cream-colored linen with lace at the collar and cuffs. Ethan wore his best suit, brushed and pressed to within an inch of its life, and when he saw Lily walking toward him down the aisle of the small church, he felt his throat tighten with emotion. Reverend Mitchell performed the ceremony with warmth and humor, speaking of the challenges of frontier life and the importance of facing them together. When the time came for vows, Ethan took Lily's hands in his and spoke from the heart. "I found you sleeping under the stars with nothing but courage and determination to keep you warm," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "And I knew right then that my life had just changed. You have brought light and love into my world, Lily, and I promise to spend every day for the rest of my life earning the gift of your trust. I will protect you, provide for you, stand beside you through whatever comes. I love you with everything I am, and I always will." Lily's eyes were shining with tears as she responded. "You offered me shelter when I had none, protection when I was vulnerable, kindness when I expected only indifference. You saw me not as a burden or an obligation, but as someone worth knowing, worth caring for, worth loving. I promise to be your partner in all things, Ethan. To work beside you, dream with you, build with you. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love someone, and I will spend my life showing you that every single day." When Reverend Mitchell pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed Lily with tender joy, and the small church erupted in applause and cheers. They walked out into the sunshine as Mr. and Mrs. Sawyer, and Ethan felt like the luckiest man in Texas. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food enough to feed everyone in the county. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with roasted chickens, fresh bread, vegetables from the garden, and a cake that was the talk of the evening. Manuel played the fiddle, and couples danced under the stars as the evening wore on. As the sun set, Ethan and Lily slipped away from the celebration, walking hand in hand to the spot where he had first found her. They stood there in the fading light, looking up at the stars beginning to emerge. "Hard to believe it has only been a few months," Lily said softly. "It feels like I have known you forever." "Some people are just meant to find each other," Ethan said, pulling her close. "I am just grateful I was riding past when I was, that I looked over and saw you. My whole life changed that night." "Mine too," Lily said, "for the better in every possible way." They returned to the celebration eventually, danced until their feet hurt and laughed until their sides ached. And when the last guest had finally departed and they retired to the room they would now share, Ethan held his wife close and thanked whatever force of fate or providence had brought them together. The years that followed were not always easy, but they were good. Garrett stood trial and was sentenced to 10 years in prison for arson and assault. His saloon was sold to a family from Dallas who ran it as a respectable establishment and contributed positively to the community. Without Garrett's poison, Johnson City thrived, growing into a prosperous town that attracted new families and businesses. The Double S Ranch prospered as well. With Lily working beside him, Ethan found that everything came easier. She had a head for numbers and took over the bookkeeping, discovering ways to save money and increase profit that he had never considered. She expanded the garden into something that produced enough vegetables not just for the ranch, but to sell in town. She started raising chickens not just for eggs but for sale, developing a reputation for quality that brought buyers from surrounding counties. In the spring of 1879, Lily told Ethan she was expecting their first child. He responded by picking her up and spinning her around until she laughingly demanded to be put down before she got dizzy. The baby, a boy they named Samuel after Ethan's father, was born in December, healthy and loud and perfect. Ethan held his son for the first time and felt his heart expand in ways he had not known were possible. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, whom they named Rose after Lily's mother. She had her mother's dark hair and her father's stubborn determination. Then another son, Jacob, 2 years after that. The ranch house rang with the sounds of children playing, and Mrs. Chen declared herself the happiest housekeeper in Texas, with such lively grandchildren to spoil, though they were not hers by blood. Ethan expanded the ranch, buying adjacent land as it became available, and eventually the Double S was one of the largest and most successful operations in the region. He hired more hands, built more structures, and invested in breeding programs that produced cattle sought after across Texas and beyond. But he never forgot the principles. His father had taught him about taking care of people, and the Double S became known as a good place to work, where men were paid fairly and treated with respect. Lily became a pillar of the Johnson City community, organizing fundraisers for the church, teaching Sunday school, and mentoring young women who needed guidance. She never forgot what it was like to be alone and desperate, and she made sure that no one in their community ever had to face that if she could help it. On their 10th anniversary, Ethan took Lily back to the spot where he had found her. It was a warm October evening, much like their wedding day, and the stars were just beginning to emerge. "Do you remember what I said that first night?" Ethan asked, holding her close. "Sleep under my roof, under my protection," Lily quoted, smiling. "How could I forget? It was the moment my life changed." "Mine too," Ethan said. "I thought I was just offering shelter to someone in need. I did not know I was inviting in the person who would become my whole world." "We have built something good here," Lily said, looking back toward the ranch house lit warmly from within, where their children were probably driving Mrs. Chen to distraction before bedtime. "Something lasting." "We have," Ethan agreed, "and we are not done yet. There is so much more ahead of us, so many more years to live and love and build together." They stood there under the stars, the same stars that had witnessed Lily sleeping alone and vulnerable so many years ago, and now witnessed them strong and together. In the distance, they could hear Samuel's voice calling for his mother, probably needing something before bed. "We should go back," Lily said, but she made no move to leave. "In a minute," Ethan said, and kissed her, pouring into it all the love and gratitude he felt for the life they had built together. When they finally broke apart, both smiling, he took her hand. "All right, now we can go deal with whatever crisis our son has created." "Probably something to do with the frog he caught this afternoon," Lily said with a laugh. "I told him it had to stay outside." They walked back to the house together, their steps matched and easy, partners in all things. And as they reached the porch, Ethan looked back one more time at the horizon, at the vast Texas sky, and felt nothing but gratitude for the night he had found a woman sleeping under the stars and offered her his protection. He had not known then that in saving her, she would save him right back, that together they would build not just a ranch but a legacy of love that would endure. As the years continued to unfold, the Sawyer family grew and flourished. Samuel showed an early aptitude for working with horses and eventually took over the breeding program, developing a line of quarter horses that became famous throughout Texas. Rose, spirited and intelligent, became a teacher, opening a school on the ranch property that served children from all the surrounding ranches. Jacob, the youngest, inherited his mother's gift with numbers and became his father's right hand in managing the business side of the operation. Ethan and Lily watched their children grow with pride and joy, guiding them but also giving them freedom to find their own paths. They celebrated weddings and welcomed grandchildren, and the ranch house that Ethan's father had built was expanded twice to accommodate the growing family. In 1895, on a cool evening in early spring, Ethan and Lily sat on the porch as they had done countless times before. They were in their 60s now, their hair silver and their bodies marked by decades of hard work, but their love for each other had only deepened with time. "Do you ever think about that night?" Lily asked, and Ethan did not need to ask which night she meant. "All the time," he admitted. "I think about how close I came to just riding past, to deciding it was not my business or too much trouble. And then I think about everything I would have missed if I had made that choice." "I think about it too," Lily said softly. "I think about how scared I was, how alone I felt, and then I think about the sound of your voice, the kindness in it when you offered me shelter. It was like the whole world shifted in that moment, like everything before was just leading to that point where our lives intersected." Ethan reached over and took her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. "Best decision I ever made, stopping to help you." "Best decision I ever made, saying yes," Lily countered, smiling. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as their grandchildren played in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. In the distance, they could see Samuel working with a young colt, Rose walking up the path from the schoolhouse with papers to grade, Jacob in the barn with Manuel's grandson discussing the next cattle sale. "We did good," Ethan said finally. "We built something that will last long after we are gone." "We did," Lily agreed. "But more than that, we loved well, and in the end I think that is what matters most." As the sun set over the Double S Ranch, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, Ethan pulled his wife closer and thought about all the years behind them, and whatever years remained ahead. They had faced drought and flood, financial struggles and personal losses, but they had faced it all together. And that, he thought, was the real legacy, not just the land or the success, but the love that had sustained them through everything. Later that night, after the grandchildren had been collected by their parents and the house had grown quiet, Ethan and Lily prepared for bed. It was a ritual they had performed thousands of times, but it still felt precious, these quiet moments at the end of the day when they could simply be together. As they lay in the darkness, Lily's head resting on Ethan's shoulder as it had for nearly 20 years of marriage, she spoke softly. "Thank you for finding me that night. Thank you for seeing me not as a burden or a problem, but as someone worth saving." "You saved yourself, Lily," Ethan said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You were already strong and brave. I just gave you a place to rest while you figured out your next step. I never imagined that next step would be staying here, building this life with me." "Where else would I have gone?" Lily asked, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "You offered me not just a roof but a home, Not just protection, but partnership. Not just shelter, but love. How could I have walked away from that? I am glad you did not, Ethan said simply. They drifted off to sleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, secure in the knowledge that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together as they always had. The years continued to pass, marked by the changing of seasons and the milestones of family life. More grandchildren arrived, and eventually great-grandchildren, and the Double S Ranch became a gathering place for generations of Sawyers. Ethan and Lily became the patriarch and matriarch of a sprawling family, beloved and respected, their love story told and retold until it became part of family legend. On their 40th anniversary, the family threw a massive celebration at the ranch. People came from across Texas and beyond, friends and neighbors and business associates, all wanting to honor the couple who had built not just a successful ranch but a true community. There was food and music and dancing, and speeches that made both Ethan and Lily blush with the praise. But the moment Ethan treasured most came late in the evening, when he and Lily once again slipped away to their special spot under the stars. They were older now, their steps slower, but they still walked hand in hand, still found joy in each other's presence. 40 years, Lily marveled, looking up at the stars. When you found me sleeping out here, could you have imagined this, all of it? No, Ethan admitted. I hoped for a future with you, even from the beginning, but I could not have imagined how good it would be, how rich and full and wonderful. I was so scared that night, Lily said softly. Scared of what would happen to me, where I would go, how I would survive. And then you appeared like something out of a dream, offering me safety and kindness. You gave me my life back, Ethan. And you gave me a reason for all of it, Ethan said, turning to face her. The ranch, the work, everything I had been building, it did not mean anything until I had you to share it with. You made it all matter, Lily. You made me complete. She reached up and touched his face, her hand gentle against his weathered cheek. We made each other complete. That is what partnership means, what love means. Not one person saving another, but two people choosing to walk through life together, supporting each other, building together. I would do it all again, Ethan said. Every moment, every challenge, every joy, I would choose you 1,000 times over. And I would choose you, Lily said, her voice thick with emotion. Every single time. They stood there under the stars, these two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a love and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. And when they finally walked back to the house, surrounded by the laughter and love of their family, they knew that they had achieved something truly rare. A love that had not just survived but flourished, that had not just endured but grown deeper and richer with each passing year. Ethan Sawyer lived to see his 80th birthday, surrounded by 4 children, 15 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren. He spent his last years in the house he had built, working the land he loved, and cherishing the woman who had been his partner through it all. When he passed peacefully in his sleep on a warm summer night, Lily was beside him as she had been for more than 50 years. She continued on for 3 more years, still sharp and active, still the heart of the family. She spent her time gardening, teaching the great-grandchildren to read, and writing down the story of her life with Ethan so that future generations would know where they came from. She wrote about being found sleeping under the stars, about the cowboy who had offered her protection and had given her so much more, about building a life from nothing but love and determination. When Lily's time came, she was ready. She passed on a cool October evening, surrounded by family, her hand held by Rose, who had stayed by her mother's side to the end. Her last words were about Ethan, about how she was ready to see him again, about how their love had been the greatest gift of her life. They buried her next to Ethan in the family cemetery on the ranch, under the shade of an old oak tree. The headstone was simple but meaningful. Lily Anderson Sawyer, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and friend. She found shelter under his roof and built a legacy of love. The ranch continued under Samuel's management, then passed to his children and their children after that. It remained in the family for generations, a testament to what Ethan and Lily had built together. And on quiet nights, when the stars were bright and the air was still, family members would sometimes walk out to the spot where Ethan had first found Lily and feel something there. A presence or a memory or perhaps just the echo of a love so strong it had left its mark on the land itself. The story of the cowboy who found a woman sleeping under the stars and offered her his protection, who fell in love with her and built a life and legacy with her, became part of Texas folklore. It was told around campfires and dinner tables, in schools and churches, always with the same moral: that sometimes the most important thing we can do is offer kindness to someone in need, because we never know what miracles might grow from that single act of compassion. And so the Double S Ranch stood as a monument not just to hard work and determination, but to love and partnership, to the idea that two people working together could build something that would endure long after they were gone. It stood as a reminder that sometimes our greatest adventures begin with a simple choice: to stop, to help, to offer shelter to someone who needs it. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, that simple choice becomes the beginning of the greatest love story of all.